James Michael Mims Sr., age 74, coming up on 75 soon. Born here in Pasadena, California, at the Women's Hospital. And the reason I was born at the Women's Hospital because African Americans were not received in the Huntington Hospital at the time.
And where was Women's Hospital?
The Women's Hospital was across from the Huntington. It was like a clinic, and that's where most of the early ones were born. Matter of fact, my two older brother and sister, when they were born, my mom took them back to Greenville, South Carolina, which is the origin of the family. And she made the trip there twice to birth the two older ones. And then the next three, she couldn't make it that far, so she went to the old Dunbar Hospital in Los Angeles, which was built by Dr. Whitaker, who was the first black doctor here in Pasadena, and his brother in he was on Central Avenue. And anyone that knows the history of the community there, the Dunbar and the Central Avenue was the hub of African American society at the time. So they were my other three siblings were born there in Los Angeles, and I'm the only one that's native to Pasadena.
And how many siblings total?
There were 6 of us total,
Yeah.
and I call myself the 6th only child because I came along 9 years later. My sister before me was born 9 years prior to me. And the difference between my oldest sister and me is about 15 years. She's 90 years old at this particular point and still going.
Wow.
And so it's so there's out of the 6, there's 3 of us left.
And do most of you still live in Pasadena?
We all live in Pasadena.
Oh, wow.
Yes. My older sister was the only one that escaped. She left after high school or part of junior college and went to Chicago and lived in Chicago most of her adult life. She returned home about 9 years ago, and she's living in the family home. That was purchased by my mother in 1933, and which we still own, and it's still occupied by a member of the family.
Wow. And where's that? Is that
It's
home in
Lincoln Avenue, 1117
yeah.
Lincoln.
Yeah. And was that an area with a lot of African American community?
At the time, not at the time that we moved in. Still, but prior to then, they lived on Washington, and they lived on Hammond and moved around. And, when they first came to town, I'm not sure exactly where they lived, but prior to settling here, actually, my dad's uncle had already been in the area. And this is in the late teens and early 1920s. My parents came in 1920. And so they lived around in different places. And they settled there on Lincoln in like 1933. Mm-hmm. And it was fairly wide open. There weren't that many homes. There was a lot of vacant land at the time.
Did you all stay around in Pasadena, most of you?
Pasadena, Altadena.
Is it a sense of community that kept you here, or more just this is where your life happened to be?
I guess it was probably just the life and community, and it's a really nice place to be.
Yeah,
and, I've gone and I've traveled the world and traveled around, and my brothers have been in the service and they traveled, but they all came back and so forth. So it's just a matter that I go, but Pasadena is my home.
Yeah.
I have, when people say, well, they're going back home, I can't go back. I'm already here.
Yeah.
So,
where did your parents' family?
South Carolina.
Both parts came from? Uh-huh.
Yes, Greenville.
And what did your parents do when you were coming up?
Well, my dad, when he was a tailor, but unfortunately during those times he wasn't able to get a tailoring job. So he worked as a custodian, and he and my uncle both worked at the library there on Raymond and Walnut. Mm-hmm. And that's that statue there. That represents the old library. Mm-hmm. They worked there at the old library.
Oh wow!
And then in the Depression days, when the Depression came along, they were fired from their jobs, and their jobs was given to the white population. And so my dad had other jobs he was doing. So he worked at the old it's a complex down there. I can't think of the name of it. It'll come to me in my sleep and I'll call you. but my Uncle Leroy, he was trained as a barber, and so he opened his barber shop. Mm-hmm. And he had several early barber shops. One was on Dayton Street, And Dayton was, of course, the hub of the black community in the early days. And down on by the Phelps building, that Phelps was one of the first real estate agents, built that building there on Dayton. And his first barbershop was there, and then he had his second barbershop, I think it was on Green Street, somewhere in the area where the Palms used to be. And then he moved from there to Fair Oaks, between Glorietta and Hammond, and then was removed from there by the redevelopment. And then he moved his last shop, and he also had a shop, barbershop, beauty shop, and cleaners. And of course his home was there, located on Fair Oaks. And then he moved from there when the redevelopment took the property. He moved to Lincoln Avenue, just south of Figueroa and Pasadena, and that was his last shop. But my dad and both my dad and mom during the war, so they worked at Lockheed. My mom was got involved in home hand laundry. She started laundry based on the fact that a friend of hers used to do laundry for the community, and she became ill and asked my mom would she take over, and my mom said yes, and that was her job, and she actually hired other people to come in and work. And I can remember as a small kid in the back room, they had this large, what they call a mangle. It was a huge thing. It was probably 6-7 feet in width that did the sheets, and it was steamed and hot. And it was so horrendous. She also worked at the Royal Laundry too for a while on her own, and then after she stopped doing the home laundry care, she still had clients who wanted her to do their laundry. So she would they would bring it to the house, or she would go to their house and do it and take it. Because I remember one story about one of my brothers. He would say how he had to ride his bicycle all the way to South Pasadena to deliver shirts. And and everybody else was involved in driving the laundry back and forth and so forth. And during the war days, when the rationing, well, based on the fact that she was running a business, she got extra stamps, gasoline stamps, and so forth. And so we always had gas, and because of her business thing. My mother was quite an industrious individual.
Sounds like it.
She didn't let anything or anybody get in her way, and so she. One of my other brother tells a story about the fact that they went somewhere to deliver the laundry. He said he was only like 10 or so, I don't know, and my father couldn't drive the car anymore. Something happened, he couldn't drive, so he had to drive home.
A 10-year-old.
So, you see on the news these days about these 10-year-olds taking the car. Well, this was a necessity. Okay. So, so there's, that's what they did pretty much. And, my mom was pretty much the chief in charge. And, so.
She sounds like she was she had a drive to just do what needed to be.
Well, she did, because basically, from what I understand through family history and talks, and she told me that my grandmother didn't want her to marry my dad. And of course she's bullheaded and whatever, and she went on anyway. And so she married. And it was so funny because then my grandmother came to California, bought the lot next door to my mom, and built a house.
Wow, the whole family was out here, huh?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I never did get to know either one of my grandfathers. Because my mom's dad, he remarried and stayed there in Greenville. And I think he passed away somewhere like 1949 or something. Okay. And then I did know my step-granddad, he was a very nice man. He was a nice man. And then my dad's father, he never made it to California. He was a house painter and had fallen off the ladder or something and injured himself. And I guess he died en route or died prior to coming to California. So he never made it to California.
So what was your childhood like?
We made our own fun, basically. And again, I was the sixth only child, so I was much younger, so I was pretty much by myself. and I had to make do. And when we were living on Lincoln, there were no other kids on the block per se. There were others around the corner and so forth, but on the immediate block, there were no other kids. So I made up my own stuff. And I loved being outside and digging in the dirt, and still do. So, because we used to raise chickens and ducks and all that, and we used to have gardens, and I still have a garden to this day. And so it was, at that time it was normal.
Yeah.
You know, and then I was never so happy when the Hill family moved down on the corner of Lincoln and Forest, and there were 4 of them, 2 boys and 2 girls, and they were all in the same age bracket, and I was never so glad to see some more kids. So, and Mike he and I were the same age, and he just passed away here not too long ago, and the 2 other, Hillard, the oldest, and then there was Sandra and Jerry, Hill, the sisters, and so forth. So we grew up together. I was delighted when they showed up on the corner, even though they went to that other school, Lincoln, and I went to Cleveland.
That was my next question, where you went to school.
Yeah, I went to Cleveland, and the whole family went to Cleveland. And there was a first grade teacher named Doris Malone. And anybody watching this that went to Cleveland in that era will know about Doris Malone, because Doris taught my sisters and brothers. She taught me. She taught my sister's kids.
Wow.
She taught at least 3 or 4 generations of our family. And everybody remembers Doris Malone, first grade teacher. There's always one that you remember.
Yeah.
And she was one. And then there were others, but Cleveland was, it was like, you know, when you look back on it, it was simple times, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, we played outside, we used to play workups, and we used to play dodgeball and under the pergola. Now you don't even know what that is anymore. And so, and it was just, you know, simple, and we all kind of grew up together as a collection. And then when we moved from Cleveland, we all moved to Washington. And then that way, your group expanded somehow, because you had from different areas. You had, at that time, most of the rest of the population was centered around Garfield, Fair Oaks, and in that area. And so then you picked up others from Lincoln, you picked up the students from Lincoln, you picked up from Garfield. And so then you expanded, and then your horizons opened up, and then there were more opportunities to interact and so forth. And sports teams, and you know, I ran track when I was from 7th grade to 12th grade, and I did okay for my size. You know, it wasn't Olympic quality, but I did it for fun. You know, I did it for fun. I wanted to play football, but I wasn't big enough. You know, so especially in junior high school. So I ended up being the manager of the B team my 9th grade and 10th grade. I was the A manager. And it was kind of neat because I got to get out of class on Fridays to line the field.
Priorities.
Yeah, so, you know, I didn't have any classes on Friday during football season because I was in charge of lining the field. So I was manager, so that was good enough. And then when I moved from Washington after graduation, because in those days you were at junior high school or at Washington from 7th to 10th grade. And then we moved to Muir, you had 11th and 12th, and we were the second class to be all high school. Oh. Because it was 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th, and they called Muir the West Campus, and PCC was the East Campus, and they were combined. It was the school system was known as the 644, 6th grade up to 6th grade elementary, and then 4 years of junior high school, and then you had high school, junior college combined on the same campus. And it was kind of an interesting situation, because at that time you had a lot of the guys coming back from the surface, and so they're older, and you had the high school mix in it. So it was something. So the reason they changed it, I have no idea. I don't remember.
Yeah, it seems like that would sort of help, I don't know, ease people into the first 2 years of college, and you know, sort of encourage them in a way that we don't.
I think that's the way it was probably set up, and then somebody decided, well, I think we should do away with this, and you know, that. So Muir became high school in '54, high school. So 54 and 55. 55 was the first graduating class of RI, and then 56 was our class. And and La Cañada, of course, was involved in the school system, and along with Temple City. And La Cañada came to Mira for high school because they didn't get their high school built until like 63, I think it was, something like that. So, and Temple City, I don't remember when they pulled out, but a lot of those came into PHS, I think it was. So, it was an interesting time, because at that time, particular time, Pasadena's school system was high up in the nation, and as school district.
Mm-hmm.
So then after we graduated from here, and the class was a small class, probably I don't remember 400 or 500 or so, and we still have connections when we have our reunions. There's still a lot of us still around, and we still have the camaraderie. It's still, it was for me, high school was a real fun time.
Yeah.
And I know, as in my teaching at Pasadena City College, I asked the young students, well, how do you like high school? I said, well, you missed the best part of your life. You're supposed to, high school is supposed to be that year when you start forming, relationships and ideas and things about what you're going to do and so forth. But, well, we had a great time. And then we went up, from there I went to Pasadena City College. I think I fooled around there more than I did in high school. Because I didn't know what I was going to do. As you get kind of older and stuff like that.
Yeah, you change your mind,
Yeah,
you sort of figure out, yeah.
I got through that, and then I went on from there to various other and sundry things. And then when I finally grew up, I came back and settled down. I went back and refreshed myself, and then went to Cal State LA, got my degree, and there it was.
And what'd you study at Cal State LA?
I was studying for a while. I was photography major, but at that time photography was in the industrial studies. And I said, oh, here we go again. Because in the early days of going through school systems, most of the minorities were focused on shops, metal shop, wood shop, auto shop. I hated shop. And so then I said, oh no, I got to go through the shop mess again. But it was okay. Because, matter of fact, it's coming in kind of handy nowadays. Some of the things I learned. But it was in the industrial arts society section, and so I got through that, and then I ended up teaching. And how I got into teaching was, again, a fluke.
How'd that happen?
I was working for the Chandler School, which is a private school here in town, and located over by the Rose Bowl. And it hadn't been there too long, because it was located up on Mariposa. And at that time, I was working for William Wilson, who was a real estate company man. And the job opened, and he told me about it. He said, well, I'll give you a letter. You go talk to Mr. Chandler. So I did. I went to see Mr. Chandler. And he hired me basically on just Mr. Wilson, who was on the Board of Trustees, recommendation. And so I got the job, and I was the school maintenance person. And then I went from maintenance to running the whole plant. Whenever there was something building going on, I had to be involved in, so that I knew where things were. And the electricity. I know one night the city came and had a big blowout. They didn't know what fuses were, and I was the only one who knew what the fuses were, the master fuses, and so forth. And then I was approached by someone in office or teacher. They were going to form what they call mini classes. They wanted, because the student population there was small at that particular time, and they were very highly academically directed. But they felt that the students needed something other than just the hardcore academics, at least once or twice a week. So they were going to form these mini classes at the end of the day, on 1 or 2 days a week. So there was an interest in photography. Well, at the time, I had been photographing the football games and the plays and this kind of thing, just as my own thing, because I had been doing photography off and on, and I did some in the service a little bit. Learned how to do darkroom work while I was in the service, because I was stationed North Germany, a place called Bad Hersfeld. And it was so cold in the wintertime, you didn't want to go out. So I found something to do inside. Work in the dark room.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had some skills. And so then they asked me would I teach some of the kids photography. I said, me teach? And I said, okay. So I didn't know what I was going to do. But I had learned early on in life, and probably from my mom too, I remember her words, never look a gift horse in the mouth. I didn't understand exactly what that was, and I don't know if I still do it or not, but that was an old folk saying. And any of you old people listening to this, you'll know. So I said, okay. So they said, well, we're going to start so and so and so and so. So the buddy of mine, and he and I were working together. We had a little photography thing going. We call ourselves a shot in the dark photography. We would go do social groups like community activities and things like that. So I asked, they want me to teach this class, what am I going to do? So we kind of put together something real quick. And I stumbled through the first session. It was like in springtime. So I decided that, well, if I'm going to do this, I had better go back to school. So then that's when I returned to PCC again to take a photography class, just to kind of get some basics. Well, it was on and running then. And from there, I was introduced to the graphic arts department. Wally Bennett was the instructor. He had a lot of influence and a lot of help on me. And I always cherished Wally's direction and his friendship. Because his job was, he wanted all of his students to get jobs in the printing industry, because he was a motivator, basically. And so I stayed with Wally for, a couple of years, so I think it was. I was his TA for a while. And then I made the transition from there to Cal State LA to finish up the degree. And then in the meantime, I was able to, based on the vocational credential, and I was able to get a vocational credential to teach at PCC part-time as an adjunct. And once I got my foot in the door, I kept going. And got my degree and came back, and I stayed there for 32 years.
Wow. It's as industrious as your mom when you find your direction and go.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. She would always say, don't let anything stop you. Whatever you can do, whatever you want to do. And that was her word to all 6 of us. Always support, never trying to force. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where parents make mistakes. You cannot live your life through your children. You have to let them live their own. And if they choose left instead of right or straight ahead, that's it. You know, but she was always there to support you, because she supported my brother going through Art Center. We only ate dinner on the dining room table Thanksgiving and Easter and Christmas. That was his studio.
Wow. When
he was going to Art Center. And he, like I said, he was one of the first black students to be enrolled in Art Center.
And what years was that?
This was probably 40, it was after the war. Mm-hmm. So it would have to be 47, mm-hmm. 48, somewhere there. Because he was at Muir at the time and taking art classes. Mm-hmm. And he had won 2nd or 3rd place in a Rose Parade float design.
Oh, wow.
And
which float would that have? Was that the Art Center, for the Art Center, or for another city?
It was a contest or something. He was at Muir High.
Muir
Tech at the time.
Uh-huh.
And so he had submitted. So he was in a class.
Wow.
And the instructor said he would be better fitted to go into ceramics. So my brother said, I'm not going into any ceramics. I don't want to do ceramics. So he packs up his equipment and walks out.
Wow.
And he leaves. And because I was very young at the time, mm-hmm. so I don't know. But anyway, the transition somewhere in the area, he submitted his portfolio to Art Center. Mm-hmm. And they told him that, we receive a lot of our portfolios, and we only select so many. So he said, well, okay. So he said that a few days later or so, they called him and said he was accepted.
And he was the first African American student? There was no fanfare about this? It wasn't something that they
Oh,
they
no.
were just sort of matter of
No.
fact about? They just
No.
hadn't had any African
I
American
don't know.
students?
I don't know. I don't know. They just said, well, I guess
Yeah.
they based it on portfolio work.
Oh, wow.
And I guess they really didn't care
Yeah,
who you were, what
Yeah.
you were, if you could do the work. And they
Yeah.
saw something in his work.
that's excellent.
Okay, so
Was he a painter or
he was a commercial artist.
Ah,
Well, he
uh-huh.
became a commercial
Uh-huh,
artist,
uh-huh.
basically. He did commercial work. And so after art school, he graduated in 2 years. And I remember a little side story was that during the summer months, they used to go down to the beach, Paradise Cove, which was private at the time, and have the nudes on the beach and paint the nudes. So he'd take me and tell me, now you have to go down on the other end of the beach.
you were a kid, right?
Yes, yeah.
Did you go to the other end of the beach?
I followed directions. I was trying to say, what's on there? What are they doing? But,
Another kind of education.
yeah. And he would take me along sometimes because he was sort of like a father figure. Because by this time my father was gone.
Mm-hmm.
He left or whatever. He was no longer with the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so my older brothers they picked up the slack pretty much. So I did have male figures in my life to help guide me through my adult, teenage age and so forth. So then after he finished the art center, then he was looking for employment. And he would go to various places and answer ads. And they would flat out tell him, well, black man can't do art. Or Negro, or whatever they want to call him back in those days. And so it was a while before he got employed, but he answered, and he told me this story himself. He said he was on his way to Lockheed for a technical drawing assignment. And he happened to look in the paper, and there was an advertisement for an artist at Avery Labeling Company. And at that time, Avery was located in Monrovia. And so he said, oh, what the heck. So he answered the ad. Instead of going to Lockheed, he went to answer the ad at Avery's. Well, Mr. Avery himself hired him because it was a very small company at that time. And I just noticed in the paper now when they're moving their headquarters out of Pasadena into Glendale, and so forth. And he spent 30-some years with Avery.
Wow.
And he became head of the art department after a while, and until the computer came in. And he would always say that Apple is or Macintosh or whatever was responsible for all bad designs. That was his thing.
Yeah.
Because they ended up, I guess, designing most of the product back in Ohio somewhere. But he was located out at Monrovia there on California Street for 30 years or so.
Wow.
Plus he did his own artwork on the side. He had his own clients. He had Sunset Magazine, Ford Motor Company, various other independent things he would do. He used to do Christmas cards for people, and brochures, and when some of the organizations would have various civic programs, he would design the programs. He was very prolific.
Yeah.
But he was a hard worker. Based on that, I should show you something I found here a few years ago, or if we've had it, but.
Yeah. What is that?
This is a camp stool that was designed by my brother as an arts center student back in, probably 1948, 49, somewhere in that era. It's one of his projects. And it used to be all silver until I put the can of paint on it, and I'm going to clean it back up eventually. But it's actually a little traveling, folding camp stool.
Okay.
That
Excellent.
folds up, and there you go.
Wow.
So
That's pretty nifty.
This is late 40s.
Uh-huh.
One day I was walking through Big Lots, and what did I find?
Looks exactly
Modern day
same.
camp stool.
Wow.
And I said, oh, I've seen that before. Too bad he didn't get the royalties.
It's identical.
Yeah.
That's identical.
40s,
Goodness.
2000.
Wow.
And I'm sure somebody found it somewhere and said, "Oh, okay, he did." so,
Wow.
so I thought this for me was really, it just blew me away.
I
It blew
guess
me
so.
away. So I said, I got to have one. I just got to have one.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of it.
Do you remember how much you paid for it?
I think it was like, I don't know, less, probably $10 or something,
Wow.
less or whatever.
Wow.
Probably about $10.
I wonder how widely distributed that design has become.
I've seen it advertised at a couple places.
Wow.
So, but I don't know. But that just blew me away.
That's
It's
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah, it is.
It
Wow.
was just robbery.
That's something else.
Yeah.
So you spent 4 years in the service?
I only spent 2.
2. And what branch?
I was in the Army.
And you were stationed
I
in
was
Germany?
stationed in Germany, a place called Bad Hersfeld on the border. We were the last border guard station on the east-west border. And the French took over after that. And coldest place I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
But I spent about a year and a half there. I spent 2 years there.
And would that have been, what, late 50s?
60s.
Or early 60s?
60s, yeah. 61, I was drafted by they send you that letter of friends and neighbors.
No friend of mine?
Well, thank you, go, I'll say.
Yeah.
So, but it was a good experience. I got
Yeah.
to go to travel in Europe. And then again, it opened up other avenues. Because again, that's where I started my photography.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Because the cold in the dark room, yeah.
Because when I was in high school, I couldn't get into photography class.
Why not?
Good question. It was always too full, or the wrong semester, or this and that,
Yeah.
and whatever. I could never seem to get into the photography. Well, you can go to wood shop, or you can go to power shop, or you can go to auto shop. And so I never, for the 2 years I was at Mirror, photography was just out.
Yeah.
So.
But you always thought you wanted to do that. You were interested in learning about that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, in those days they used to give you that little test that would tell you about your vocation. What they call it, the recruiter preference or something, whatever it was. They had some name.
Yeah.
You had to sit in the hard seats in the auditorium for a couple of hours and take punch the holes.
Yeah.
And my results came back artistic, or something. And I didn't at that time artistic. I don't know, artistic. All I was interested was in cars, playing sports. You know, like most high schoolers at that time. You know. I've been a car nut all my life.
Yeah.
I tried to drive when I was 3.
Wow.
so they tell me I ran my dad's car into the wall because I knew how to push the button.
Oh my goodness.
It wouldn't start, but it would lurch.
Yeah.
And it lurched into the side of the house.
Oh my goodness.
Whatever. But, so I just never was able to get into photography.
Yeah.
But artistic, I guess. Down the line somewhere, the things do surface. And when they surface, then you ride the wave.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And my career at Pasadena City College I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Yeah, it was very fulfilling, and you have good...
It wasn't a job.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't a job. I was finally doing something that I like to do. I like people, and you know, it was a good time. Except for when we had to do all the paperwork and scheduling and all that. But you know, that came around once a year. But in terms of fulfillment, I could still be there if I wanted to.
Wow.
But
got other things going on now.
yeah, like staying looking busy. Because my mom always would say, because I know when she started backing down in her later years, you know, and I'd say, well, Mom, you're not doing so. She says, there comes a time when you step aside and you let the young people have it. And I realized that, okay. And so I realized when my time came, it was time to step aside. I was still, you know, I could still function.
Yeah.
No one believed me that I was quitting. It wasn't that I was quitting. I was just going on to the next level.
Yeah.
Next chapter.
Yeah. When did you retire from that?
I've been out of there 205, since 205.
Uh-huh.
So,
And you have family of your own?
yes, I have a son and a daughter,
Mm-hmm.
31, 32, and 28.
Mm-hmm. Do they live locally, or?
They're grown dependents. They live with me.
Very locally. Extremely locally.
Well, it's, you know, my son goes and comes, and my daughter she gets a pass because she was a sickle cell person, and wasn't discovered until she was probably 18, 19 months
Oh
old.
my.
And she fought it. It was very trying for her, but she was able to combat it. And, so she got through University of Riverside, and then after that, the doctor said, well, we'll try this bone marrow transplant, and it worked.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
about 3 years ago, she had bone marrow, and it was a long, tedious, hard thing
That's
to
a
do.
hard one, yeah.
But she survived it, and it worked. And my son was a donor, which was fortunate, and it took 98%.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
we're very fortunate.
Yeah, yeah.
So, because if not, the life expectancy with that was not looking very good.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've been through a lot of hard times and trying times with that, but it's all part of the life cycle, and you just deal with it. And we did, and sacrifices. There's always sacrifices, and you never finish. So eventually, hopefully and then she started doing some substitute teaching and stuff.
She's a teacher?
She substitutes now, so she has art. She wants to do some artwork too, whatever. I said, well, so you better go where you make some money.
You've got some artistic people in your family. It runs in your family.
Yeah, because my mom used to make, from what my sister says, she used to make these big dolls that you put on the thing, and lampshades and things like that.
Oh, yeah?
And I found one of her applications for employment. I think it was Nash's, the old Nash's that used to be in the department store here. She liked writing, and she had the loveliest handwriting, because in all her organizations she used to belong to the PTA and the church groups and the social groups. She was always the secretary. I guess she wrote so well. And she was the first black PTA president in Pasadena.
Really?
Back in '53, I think it was, 54.
Wow.
Served on the PTA council as a treasurer. And another backstory on that deal was, I remember, I think it was 54 or 55, somewhere there. She was doing the books, and they were looking to balancing the books. She was looking for a penny, and she and one of my brothers were going over the books and couldn't find this penny. So me, with my smart self, said, well, why don't you just put the penny in there? And she turned to me and she says, you don't do things like that. You find the penny. I shut up. 2 days later, they found the penny. That's the kind of person she was.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the kind of person she was. You just don't put the penny in to make it balance. You find where it went wrong. Because based on that, somewhere else is wrong, somewhere else, and that penny can end up in the dollars. And we see what the people have done with these books these days. So that's the kind of person she was. And so she was very active in the community. She belonged to what they called the Tuesday Morning Club, which was a social group of, I don't know why they called it the Tuesday Morning Club. I can say men on Tuesdays, I don't know. and most of the women were like business women, like hairdressers and whatever, this kind of thing. But they would meet and they did various charitable and scholarships and this kind of thing. And then she worked in a church. She was in the choir and the First AME church was here in town. She did all kinds of things, Red Cross. She was quite involved.
Did your family attend the First AME church, or did you have a church active in your...
Actually, she was the Methodist part. She was. And early on we did. I remember as a kid I would go, that's when First AME was down on Vernon and Kingston. And it's a big old church down there. And that was pretty much, well, it was the first African American church in town. So she went. She said, will you go? And then I decided I didn't want to go anymore. So she didn't force you.
She didn't...
That wasn't her. She didn't
supported, but not...
Yeah. And even, so my great aunt that lived with us, she came out, I guess, I don't remember, the third or fourth one was born or something. She came out from Greenville, South Carolina to help my mom. My mom asked her, would you come out and help me with the kids for a minute? Well, she came out, I guess, on Christmas Eve. I don't remember what year, but she never went home. She stayed. And she helped raise the brood. Well, she was Episcopal. And because she was a seamstress in South Carolina, who used to go between South Carolina and New York doing seamstress. And so she came, and my Uncle Leroy's wife, Aunt Rosebud, she and 4 or 5 other ladies formed St. Barnabas Church, and which was an offshoot from All Saints, because at the time All Saints did not want us there, and this is well documented. They don't want to talk about it too much, but it was quite significant in terms of the population. So my Aunt Rosebud and Mrs. Bevins, and I can't remember the other 3 or 4 ladies, they formed a church down on Pasadena Avenue, I think it was, in a house in about 1920, I think 23, somewhere in there. And then they moved to Fair Oaks Avenue, where we're located now, in about 26. We just had our 70th or 80th birthday, I forgot what. So that land was donated to us by the Fleming family that lived out on California Boulevard. And they donated the land to us, and they built a little chapel of St. Barnabas up there. And so my aunt went there, and she used to be picked up on Sundays, because she didn't drive, by some friends around the corner, the Keys, Mr. and Mrs. Keys. And Mr. Keys had this great big yellow and black Lincoln. And again, I've been a car nut all my life, and he would pull up on Sundays to pick up my aunt. And I just would go out there and I'd look at this car, and I just loved it. It just, so one Sunday I jumped in the car, and I went to church with my aunt. Been going ever since.
It started with the car.
It started with the car, absolutely. It did.
Excellent. Whatever gets you there.
Yeah, and so I started there at about 3 years old.
Wow.
And I served on the altar. I knew all the priests. I've served all the priests. There was Father Wilkins was the first. Prior to that, there was another, but Father Wilkins was actually the first priest. And then Father Norman came next, and then Father Jesse Moses. And then after Jesse, Father Norman came back, and then there was Father Otley, Pat Ben, and all of them. You know the whole history of the church. And so I've been pretty much the curator of the history of the church.
Wow.
In terms of longevity and also filming and this kind of thing. And I have all the documentation. But out of all the priests, Father Jesse Moses was probably my favorite.
Yeah. Why?
Father Jesse was not only a priest, but he was also a school teacher. He was the first black school teacher here. Well, noted black in terms, and he was the first principal, Principal McKinley.
Oh, wow.
And he was an educator as well as a minister. And I don't know if I was his server. Father Jesse was the one that opened the doors to All Saints, because we had a family that wanted to get married, and our church just wasn't big enough. Lois and Ron Richards, and so they needed a bigger church. So he went to talk to them out at All Saints, and got the door open, and we had the wedding at All Saints, big wedding. And I was his altar boy, and so I was the first black altar boy that served at All Saints.
Yeah.
Only one time,
Yeah.
And so forth.
What year would that have been?
50. So it was in the middle to late 50s.
And when did All Saints open up to black members officially?
I'm not sure. Probably about the time Father Regis came and upset the apple cart. He was very liberal, because he chased a lot of the conservatives away. That's documented. No.
Yeah.
So it's open. And there's a lot of factors. And it's now kind of a really going from right to left wing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So Father Jesse was just an outstanding person. The reason he left the church was that he was concerned about having to do both. It was kind of hard on him. And I was a teenager about this time, and he would talk to me about it. He says, I really, I'm having a hard time doing this. But his final decision was that he knew that the bishop would replace him with another black priest, but the district may not replace him with another black teacher. So I gained a lot from him in terms of I think probably maybe way back inside somewhere, that's probably my influence on teaching, maybe something. But he did have a significant amount of influence on me. So out of all of them, I think Father Jesse would be the one that I would say influenced me in terms of the church and other aspects of life.
What do you consider your community?
I know everybody now.
Everybody and everything.
Everybody knows me. They know that head. They identify me by my head. I think it's just a matter of been here for a long time, seen a lot, done a lot,
yeah,
what have you. Because I know when my son was coming up, and we'd go somewhere and people stop and we talk, and it's just like, everybody knows you, Dad. And now he's turned out to be the same one. I've had him somewhere and he stops and he knows all these people. So he's kind of picked up on that same kind of, likability or whatever. And sometimes people stop and tell him, who was that? I don't know. They know me, but I don't know him. I don't know. So, but yeah, haven't come up in the community. It's like I said, now there's a group of us that went through elementary, junior high, and high school. We meet once a month down in Brookside for lunch for the whole days. And just, still have connections and still talk about how it was. And, just, I guess that's what you do when you get there.
Is it any different?
Oh, sure. But, you don't look back, you just go ahead.
Yeah.
And you remember, but you forget about it and you keep going and you look for the next. And, they always say, well, I like it. On my day, I walked to school in the rain, in the mud, and whatever. So,
did you do that?
I only had a mile.
Do you have those stories?
I only had a mile to go, and it was so funny because I had a car when I was 15, but couldn't drive it until I was 16.
Wow.
I was 16. My brother bought me my first car, 1936 Ford.
Wow.
$50. And he said, here it is, you take care of it, you pay the insurance and everything. So, okay, I put the lawnmower in the car. Now I could get out of the neighborhood. See, at first I could only push the lawnmower out of the neighborhood. Now I had a car, I could go further than the neighborhood. So, okay.
Watch out, world.
So, actually I did have my own gardening business for a while at one time. And so I couldn't drive to school. The insurance said, it was liability and all this, you can't drive to school. So I said, okay, I'd take the bus or walk or ride and get to school. And then after school, I get somebody to bring me home, I get the car, then I go back to school. School was over, okay? Actually, I would say that I look back on childhood and the things, and the way things were at the time, like we couldn't swim in Brookside Pool. Okay, I've never been in Brookside Pool. Even though because my mom was on the suit that took 10 years. She was part of the committee that formed the suit and so forth. Because they actually wanted to build a no park for us where the freeway goes now across Lincoln when you pass Royal and you're heading north between it would be Manzanita and Hammond. They wanted to actually build us a park, a segregated park. And they said, oh no. So they sued them and it took 10 years. Now my children and grandchildren have been in the pool, but I've never been in the swim. But she wouldn't let any of us in.
Yeah.
You're not going in there. Because Tuesdays was the international day that we could swim.
Yeah.
So that was different. Things like that have changed. You had to sit in the back of the movie theater. That's all changed. We used to go to the Crown Theater over there and open the side door and let our friends in.
That may have changed or no?
You know, when you go to the drive-in out in Hastings Ranch, we put them all in the trunk. You know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's been changes, and just from a physical standpoint, the community has changed.
Yeah.
Some of the landmarks have gone. You know, the neighborhoods have changed. I've seen the whole change from one generation to the next, and the gentrification that has taken place.
Yeah.
And so forth. And I look around our neighborhood and how you see the white community coming back into the neighborhoods. And when it started that way, so 50 years ago, now here it comes back.
Yeah.
I remember learning in social science class, or sociology, what they call the concentric circle. It moves out every 20 years or so, and it comes back. You know, it makes this circle in and out, in and out. And so that's what we're seeing now. We're just changing neighborhoods. But we're seeing a mix, too, which is not a bad thing, not a bad thing. Look at your churches. You're seeing a mix in the churches and so forth. You know, some are still segregated with the Hispanic service or the Chinese service or whatever focus it means. But eventually it all merges. And it's the same thing. So a lot of changes have taken place. And like some good and some things haven't changed at all.
If you could still get a car for $50, that'd be nice.
Now I have 8.
You have 8 cars? Oh my goodness. Well, you like them. Why don't you tell me about your cars? Those are probably partly your babies too.
Those are my pets. You know, if people have walked their dogs and stuff, I drive my cars.
Yeah. 8. Wow. Do you have, where do you?
Oh, I have them stashed all over the place.
Oh my goodness.
I have 2 in the garage. I have 2 classics in the garage.
What are they?
I have a 1956 Chevy Cameo pickup truck, which is a very rare piece of. I bought it from the original owner.
Wow.
And it was purchased in Pasadena in the old Chevrolet dealership on Colorado and Pasadena Avenue in the old days. And Mr. Turner, Bob Turner, was the owner. And he bought that when I was in senior high school.
Oh, wow.
And I always loved the truck. And I said, Mr. Turner, I want that truck. And one day he had a sign on it. And so I told my wife, I said, well, if you let me buy this, I won't buy any more. Because at that time I had a couple of 3 others and so forth. So I lied. Only problem was her name's on the pink slip too. So then I have a 1972 240Z that I bought brand new.
Wow.
And then I have a 1969 Volkswagen. Those are the 3 classics.
Wow.
But those 3 are my pets.
Your pets, yeah, I guess so.
I was golf early when my brother was alive. He and I would golf, and we would go from Monterey to San Diego to Palm Springs to Las Vegas. We just go.
Yeah.
And then when he passed away, I kind of lost interest. And then about 2 years ago, a friend of mine I used to work with, he ran into me in the gym one day. He said, "You play?" I said, "Nah." So he pulled me back out of the dumps, and he and his wife, she was just learning to play. So I started playing with them. And now I got the group here, I got a group in Long Beach, and so I'm back playing again.
Back playing, that's
I love
good.
it.
Yeah.
I think I've had a very fortunate life, a good life. And there was a photographer that was Ruth Bernard. She was like in her 90s, and she did an interview for Kodak. And at the end of the interview, the interviewer said, "Is there anything that you'd like to leave with the young students?" And she says, "Never let anyone rob you of your childhood, and never get used to anything." And I always would show that film at the first of the semester to the students, because I thought it was very important. And as you look around today, I think that young people, the children now, they don't have a childhood. You know, they're missing stuff. You know, and as I look back at my childhood, I had advantages that some didn't. I missed some things that some did. But all in all, I had a really good life. I had good family. So you can't ask for anything. And I think the key is you don't get used to anything because it changes so rapidly.
Yeah.
And you just move on. And when it comes time for the final call, you answer it, and no one else can. So what I missed it. Okay. What I did it. Okay. So the women from the past showed up at the meeting, and I said, "Oh no, get them out of here." So she has been gone for like 30 years or so, and so she wanted to get information on it. I said, "You missed it. 30 years is gone. It's water under the bridge, and it's not coming back." So
Just keep moving.
start from where you are, and you can have fun. And my thing is, I try to make somebody laugh at least once a day.
You did that today. Well, and you have a good laugh. Has anybody ever told you that?
Oh,
You
yes.
Continue,
yes.
just laugh.
They said that was one of the things they said about when I left school, because we had the lab downstairs in the basement and stuff. And they said, well, they would miss my laughter in the hallway. Love life. It's good. Kindness, joy, peace, and happiness.
Thank you.
You're welcome.